Lando Norris has managed to shed 10 points in the last 2 races to Verstappen, and with 6 races to go, 3 of which have sprint events included, the Brit has a 52-point deficit that he needs to overcome in order to become a champion of the world. However, with Verstappen and Red Bull rediscovering their form in Singapore, this will be a tough challenge for Norris, who has now sent a fierce warning towards his nemesis and a close friend at the same time when it comes to the fight in the drivers' category. Can Norris put up a proper fight in the remainder of the championship? And if so, will he withstand the pressure of going against a 3-time world champion? It's safe to say that nobody has bet on a championship fight like the one we're having in 2024. And while Verstappen's lead seems secure at the majority of the past races, the fact that the RB20 has lost its dominance from Miami onwards has pointed towards the fact that we might have a very interesting fight in the drivers' category. But there is one defeating moment for Norris. The gap between him and Verstappen has remained the same ever since Miami, 52 points. And while the momentum is on the Woking-based squad's side, there is a lot to overcome in the next 6 races if he wants to emerge victorious over Verstappen. For example, if Norris is to win every race until the end of the championship, including the sprint events, and have the fastest lap in all of them, if Verstappen finishes second in all of these races, the Dutchman will still walk away with the championship in Abu Dhabi. Of course, McLaren can always count on Piastri taking points away from Verstappen, but Norris hasn't really shown that he's capable of capitalising on such situations, because even with Leclerc in the mix for a casual podium finish or a race win, and a Mercedes car up there, the competition has never been closer in the past couple of years. But Norris's attitude has changed a lot in the past couple of months, and now the Brit believes that if his team can do what they did in Singapore, then they can fight for the championship in a clean manner. Elaborating on this to a greater extent, the Brit has sent a fierce warning towards Verstappen as he added, "This is what I've got to do, this is what I need, and this is what we need to do as a team. We've executed things perfectly as a team in Singapore, especially to get Oscar into P3. But we need to do it at every race until the end of the year if I want to have a chance to get Max. We're working hard, and if I keep doing what I've done this weekend, then it's definitely possible." What is a huge advantage for Norris and McLaren is that they've shown strengths on tracks where the mini DRS trick doesn't work wonders, which are tracks with high downforce requirements of the car, such as Zandvoort and Singapore. This is where the flexibility of the front wing of the MCL38 comes to shine, as it bends to perfection on the slow corners, and it also allows the car to have a perfect amount of speed when it's entering the high-speed corners, keeping it in the optimal operating window, something that Red Bull has struggled with a lot throughout 2024. Norris has also shared his thoughts as to when the championship fight will be decided, and the McLaren driver believes that it will all come down to the last race of the season in Abu Dhabi, or more precisely, a 2021-like championship can be recreated in the next couple of months. When talking about this, the 3-time race winner continued, "I hope the battle will go down to the wire. I still have a lot of points I've got to catch up, and it's not going to be easy to do it. It's against Red Bull and it's against Max, the most dominant pairing you've ever seen in Formula 1 from last year. And that's not necessarily changed. It's the same team and it's the same driver. So I have some of the toughest competition that Formula 1 has ever seen in the sport. We're doing a better job as a team right now because my car and our car are quicker than theirs. But that's just credit to the team doing an amazing job and being smarter and doing cooler things and creating mini DRS flaps and stuff. I'm working my heart out. I'm working my butt off to try and make sure the championship happens. Verstappen is trying to make sure it doesn't happen. So we'll have to wait and find out." Of course, a situation that McLaren needs to figure out is how they will approach the last 6 races if Piastri is ahead of Norris. And while the infamous papaya rules have been discussed about a lot in the past couple of weeks, the Aussie admitted that it wouldn't be always necessary for him to give up the position to Norris if that's being asked on the team radio. But as all things stand, it would be enough for Piastri to finish second behind Norris just to prevent Verstappen from catching those extra 3 points that separate the P2 and P3. Or, on the other hand, if Piastri is somehow out of the points or fighting for scrap points, they could sacrifice him to take away the point of the fastest lap if Verstappen is holding it in the closing stages of the race. This is something that Zak Brown admitted will be discussed in a race-to-race manner with the team principal Andrea Stella, with the latter one being cautious when it comes to admitting that Norris is still in the fight for the Drivers' Championship. Decisions like the one McLaren brought in Hungary might haunt them at the end of the season, but the strategy calls in Canada and Silverstone are also something that they could be reflecting once the season closes its curtains in Yas Marina, which will be a valuable lesson for McLaren headed into 2025. When talking about the current championship battle, Stella admitted that the ball is still in Verstappen's court and that they're the ones who have a lead that Norris and McLaren have to steal in the Drivers' Championship, despite the fact that Verstappen hasn't won a race in the last 8 events. Elaborating further on this extent, Stella said, "The Drivers' Championship is definitely not in our hands because it's still with Max. Likewise, the Constructors' Championship is more in our hands in fairness. I think we go away potentially encouraged and more optimistic that the Drivers' Championship is possible because of the performance of the car." What McLaren has hoped massively is that the last 2 races in Baku and Singapore would have gone heavily in their matter. And one couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if Norris reached Q3 in Baku, where Verstappen had a disastrous weekend. Even though the Brit still finished ahead of him, it was just 3 points in his favour, which is far from enough to take a comfortable lead before the last race in Abu Dhabi. What's also a defeating factor for Norris is that the only race in which he was able to outscore Verstappen by more than 8 points, which is what he needs to do for the remainder of the 6 races if he is to win the championship, was in Australia, where Verstappen DNF'd because of a brake failure in the early stages of the race. However, the situation has changed drastically since then, and even Helmut Marko has raised the awareness that we might be looking at a very difficult Norris to beat from Austin onwards. The Austrian team will have a long period to think about the upgrades that they'll bring to the circuit of the Americas, but the fact that it's a sprint race and that they will only have 1 free practice to test it out, which is further bad news given the fact that they already have limited time in the wind tunnel due to the sporting penalty, goes to show that Red Bull might be in huge trouble in the 2 triple headers that are coming upon us. This is also opening up the door for a potential Verstappen exit from 2026 onwards, as Marko admitted that Verstappen will drive where he can win. So, if Red Bull doesn't give him that opportunity, the combination of Newey and Honda will definitely be too sweet to turn a blind eye on. Verstappen has also urged his team to bring in upgrades that are working, but given the fact that Ferrari, McLaren and Mercedes will also come with their own flexible front wings in Austin, following a path that's been set from the British teams, it would be interesting to see how it will all pan out once the cars hit the ground in Austin. For Verstappen, all he needs to do is finish either ahead of Norris, or if he's behind him, the difference shouldn't be bigger than 8 points, which, given his experience as a 3-time world champion, shouldn't be that hard. But with the difference in performance being way too much in Norris's favour, as well as having drivers like Leclerc and the duo Mercedes who are always here to steal a podium finish or a position off Verstappen, it would be interesting to see how Austin and the remainder of the calendar will be survived by the Austrian team, who are now under a serious threat to lose the 2nd place in the Constructors' Championship as well. So, with all this in mind, do you think that Norris has what it takes to win the Drivers' Championship from Verstappen? And if so, do you think that it will be marked as one of the greatest championships ever, given the fact that he's overcome the biggest deficit in the history of the sport? Let us know in the comments down below.